Hi and welcome to this slightly different video to normal. We're not doing the cleaning. This is a full wheel bearing replacement, clean up and service, basically a full service on a wheel. So you can see here we've got a very notchy free hub. It jams and then releases, sign of bearings up all the pulls in the hub itself. So this is our initial job to do. So we take off the cassette heads straight for the ultrasonic cleaner, and then these caps are just dust covers. I think it depends on whether you got through axles or quick releases to which caps you would have on these. Maybe you can see that bearing there, that rust there is rust from the bearing because it can only come from there. Everything else is aluminium, so that's the bearing deteriorate. It must have had a hardened steel bearing. Cheap nasty bearings in this wheel. We replaced them with high-end stainless steel bearings, so much better. You can see here the pulls are very dry. The whole thing is dry. It's, probably would turn half a turn before they would engage. You probably would have been a quite strange bike to ride. So we knock them bearings out of there first. I use the lock ring from an old cassette just to make sure I don't damage the threads. You can see all the grit and rust and everything inside there. It's all from bearings and road film, and you can see most of that is actually bearing rust. So we knock out the second bearing. This has to come through from the back and then through the front. And then on the wheel itself, we'll tap out the bearings. I always do them on a carpet or a soft bit of wood if I'm knocking them out. And we took off the seal here to show you this. You can see all that grease and debris and the movement in the bearing races there. The grease is compacted, gone hard. It is absolutely end of life. They're non-serviceable because of the seals, but that one you could see it just absolutely gone. Next up, everything in the ultrasonic cleaner, and when we turn this on, we put fresh in here. You can see that dust cloud, that's grease and oil lifting out. You could never do that as nicely as with an ultrasonic cleaner. Next up, we clean the axle with chain cleaner. We like that because it evaporates nicely, and yeah, it's a good cleaner. So we're beginning to bring this up. So we are nearly at 500 subscribers this week. Probably by the time this video goes out, we've hit that minor milestone. We're very pleased, and thank you for subscribing if you're a subscriber, but make sure you hit that like button. It's nice to know you're out there enjoying our videos, and yeah, that gives us a little boost, so make sure you like this video for us. Next up, we're using auto glim to polish the wheel, spokes, center, and everything comes out the degreaser. So now this is a water-based degreaser, so next up we'll wash all these parts off. And you can see when I do this that when I dry it, there's no grease residue. It's absolutely spotless, which is just how you need anything that runs with bearings. You need it all spotlessly clean. So there's a few marks on this axle, but I don't think it's anything of any concern. It's just through age really, but it's a serviceable part. With new bearings, there's no need to replace those parts. Even the skewer we put through the ultrasonic cleaner, that was quite thick. Next up, we use copper slip on all the seats of our bearings. It's just a nice grease that remains. When you pull these bearings back out in the future, they'll come out an awful lot easier because of this preparation. It's almost like preparing for the future because you don't get that dissimilar metal sticking property so much. So we use a nice little press here that we've got, and we use this on all our wheel bearings, etc. It's very important to use a press on bearings, then you don't damage the seals, you don't buckle the bearing by pushing it in a seat not square, and yeah, they go in very nice if you've got the right press, and all bearings need it. So up next is the outer one, and this will then be the hub complete. So we just wind that in, and you'll feel them stop, and then they're ready. And then yeah, we just check that, and that's now absolutely spot on. It's rotating freely. Now I always just give this a squirt with oil. There's a rubber seal on the back there. It just helps lubricate that and lubricate the part to push it in place when it goes back on the wheel. And then we use DT Swiss grease on the paws. It's sort of my chosen hub grease really. And then we a little bit of copper slip where these main axle bearings go. Again, we press that on. This is the first one. This is non-drive side. I've put in there first. Next up, the axle itself goes into that non-drive side bearing. You can do this either way. You could either put the bearing that I'm going to put in this side first and then push this in from the other side. It would actually be easier because you wouldn't need such a large spacer. Or you can do it the other way around. I just chose to do it this way around on this particular wheel on this particular day. I've got all the space and everything, so it makes no difference really. And we wind that one in next. And then once those bearings are in, we can start to really get this wheel back together. You can see there it's beginning, it all looks clean, it all looks fresh. You can just, see fresh lubricants, etc. I always just grease this channel because the rubber from the hub sits on there. So I just give that a little bit of lubrication, future-proof it. And then we just work this on. This should actually just be a really straightforward press fit, so that, that works its way on there. And then we just put those caps back on each side. Now just grease the free hub itself before putting the cassette on. Again, it just future-proofs any sticking. On goes that Durace cassette. I think this was 11 speed. And then we put that lock nut on. That's all done with a torque wrench. And so the bike is now fresh. Give the quick release a little squirt of oil and a little grease on the threads. And this wheel is now ready to go into the truing stand. So next up, we're just running the truing gauge around here. This gives us a tension gauge. It gives us the tensions on each of the spokes, as we can see where the wheel is sitting at the moment. There was a bit of play in this. We put this into our program and you can see we get some highlighted spokes that are either too tight or too loose. That's usually the benchmark starting point for getting the wheel tensions correct all around the wheel before we actually true it. And then you can see on that was the final report that showed it was perfect. And then obviously fresh rim tape. You don't want the old stuff back on there. This is a Schwalbe canvas tape. Tyre back on. Always line up your logos. Always check your directional arrows. Make sure everything's in the right place. Get that logo over your valve. It's all just good detailing. And then inflate that wheel. Halfway through, just check you're not nipping that tyre anywhere. And then just give that inflation to chosen pressure. And that wheel is now ready to ride.